Good morning and welcome to In a Crisis Family Matters, the video blog that we created to help people who are in communities that are most impacted by the COVID crisis. So I'm delighted to welcome Jahmal Cole of My Block, My Hood, My City to join us here today. So welcome, Jahmal.
Thank you guys for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Jahmal, you're working with some of the most challenged neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. And the violence and trauma that has existed pre-COVID. So how is all of this impacting the neighborhoods that you work in?
You're starting to see a lot of camaraderie of a lot of community organizers coming together. I've, our motto is, we don't wish for less challenges, we want more skills. So I've seen a lot of people display good leadership. And what I mean by good leadership is like, you don't know what to do, but you ask questions, you seek to understand, and you continue to move forward when you're uncertain. I've seen government do this recently. I've seen business sector do this. I've seen nonprofit sectors do this. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're trying to distribute safety kits, distribute food, distribute masks, just trying to do whatever we do the best we can with what we have. And I think that's been very uplifting for me personally. And I'm encouraged, but at the same time, I know there's a lot more to do.
Mm-hmm. So over the weekend, we heard of 49 people shot and 10 people killed in some of these neighborhoods in Chicago. And with the addition of the COVID crisis, it's like a trauma on top of trauma. What's the actual impact on the people of the neighborhoods and how is My Block, My Hood, My City positioning to help these people?
The accuracy of those numbers, for all we know, it could have been 100 people, shot. We don't really put a lot of, credit into those numbers that we hear every weekend about how many people were killed and how many people were shot. What I will say is that there's been a public health issue going on in Chicago long before COVID-19 got here. Researchers have been calling gun violence in Chicago a public health issue for decades. It feels now like that was just eloquent wordplay, because when you see how the response has been to coronavirus and how the response has been to gun violence, it hasn't even been. It's almost like the problems that existed were. What I'm trying to say is that we put a hospital up right away for coronavirus, right? We turned McCormick Place into a hospital. That wasn't even a trauma center on the South Side for decades, where people were, being shot to death in gun violence. So we responded to this one a lot differently. I'm proud of how we're responding. I just want us to not forget when this pandemic, God willing, when this pandemic passes us, right? Let's not forget how we. Let's make sure the framework doesn't get lost. Because right now there's not a lot of red tape. You can get grants faster. A lot of things are happening faster. Let's not let the framework of how we're giving and our empathy be lost once this pandemic is over.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that we've learned in the midst of this pandemic is that the poor and African-American communities are much greater impacted by this COVID crisis. And it probably relates to what you're talking about is the systemic, variables that existed before this. How does My Block, My Hood, My City try to address some of those systemic variables in helping people in these situations?
Yeah, so right now there's a lot of youth, high school students that are not in school, and also they don't have a job. And there's a lot of seniors that need support. So we've had over 3,000 seniors reach out to us from every neighborhood in Chicago, 12 different states. And these are seniors that, they can't come out the house to get groceries, they're afraid, and they might need to be connected to healthcare physicians. So, and then their students need work. So what we've done is we've hired 75 students, and we've paid them $15 an hour to work 10 and 12 hours a week. And what they do is they make well-being calls to the seniors. So we have this population of students that need work, and we have these 3,000 seniors that need to be checked upon. And so what we've been doing is they've been calling and empathy-led calls. Like how we've had to train them. They get certificates from Rush Hospital on how to make these calls. And it's empathy-based. How are you doing today? You build a rapport before you start asking medical questions. But what we're learning is that a lot of seniors are lonely right now, and a lot of them also need to be connected to primary healthcare physicians And also a lot of them need to be educated on COVID-19. So our youth, or our millennials, between 14 and 21, they've actually been working, and we feel like, when you have a job and you have income and you have goals, that keeps you protected from violence that's going on, because idle's mind is the devil's workshop, and you don't want kids just going to coronavirus-filled parties or roaming the streets right now. They need something to do. So instead of telling kids what to do, we're trying to provide them options with things to do. And what's been successful for us is creating this program called Youth Senior Connect, where it started off as a youth job program, but now it's almost workforce development because we've hired so many youth. But that's how we're doing it. And we're also spreading supplies once per month. We're reaching 1,000 seniors with care packets. We're having, volunteers meet us in parks. They drive up, they never get out of the car. When they drive up, we give them 5 addresses and 5 care packets, and they deliver them to addresses all around the city. So we're able to reach about 1,000 seniors a month with our care packets, and we're able to reach about 100 residents a month with food. And then, of course, with our well-being calls, we do about 600 a month. That's how, and again, this is all new. We've never done this stuff before. Our motto is taking care of people no matter what, and we're doing the best we can right now.
So Jahmal, obviously there's a lot of trauma on the kids of these neighborhoods, and it's probably a challenge for them to connect with a sense of hope and see a path forward out of the challenges of the neighborhood. How are you helping those kids and giving them that sense of hope?
Just we call it being 100 with them, being honest with them, not allowing them to make excuses. I've made a lot of excuses myself in my life, so I just lead by example. A lot of kids say they're a product of their environment, they're a victim of their circumstances, their parents didn't go to college, they don't have any money. I've made all these excuses before, so I hold kids accountable, number one, and let them know the highest level of maturity is taking full responsibility for your actions. That's number one. Right. And number two, I teach kids goal setting. A lot of youth don't know how to set goals for themselves, not personal goals, family goals, business goals. I try to show them that if they get specific about their goals, then they plan for it. Their purpose will pull them through a pandemic. I show them, like, hey, this is your goal. You write this down every day. And the reason why you want to have goals is because you feel better about checking the list off every day, and it creates a force. Like, goals don't only tell you what to do, they tell you what not to do. It creates a force field around you because you have goals. If you don't have goals, if you haven't started your day off with it already, planned out, then you're really susceptible to things happening to you. So I'm really showing kids the power of goal setting, and also the power of not making excuses and taking full responsibility for your actions. And from what we can do is connect them to jobs right now with our Youth Senior Connect program. And so the ones that we can hire, that's what we've been doing right now.
Mm-hmm. So what was it that inspired you to create My Block, My Hood, My City?
Growing up, I always wanted to start a movement. I wanted to be like Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy, Stokely Carmichael. I always wanted to do something positive. And, that's what I love, helping people, and that inspires me. And that same vigor, or that same drive, brought me to Cook County Jail to volunteer when I was 24. And yeah, man, in the jail, all kids ever talked about was their block and their hood. And I wanted to know, why didn't they ever say my city? And they'd be like, my block is this and my hood is that. Well, why don't you ever say my city? And that's when I realized they'd never been downtown, right? They had never waited for a taxi. They'd never been on an elevator. They'd never been on a plane. Like, their whole worldview was shaped by the infrastructure of a divested Chicago community area. And that's tragic, man. Like, everything you want to be is and dream of is shaped by a few blocks. That's not good. That's isolation. That's narrow-mindedness. That's isolation. So what I started doing was just taking kids from these communities downtown, or taking kids from the communities to Greektown or to Chinatown or to Divine Avenue, and exposing them to different foods, different cultures, different jobs. I mean, if you grow up in a community in Chicago that's divested, there can be 15 currency exchanges and no banks. So, you ask a kid, what's a job at a bank? They have no clue. They've never been to a bank, right? So you take that kid to a bank and see the different jobs. A light goes off, and a light bulb goes off, a light switch. It's possible, right? It's possible now for me. It wasn't possible before, but I realized it is possible, and I can do it. You can take a kid to Gatorade, and they can learn about consumer engagement. They'll be like, I want to be a consumer engagement specialist now. You say, well, why? They never knew that job existed. So what I do, I believe exposure is key. You know, in my organization, that's our exposure is key. We expose 150 youth or teenagers from these under-resourced or divested communities. We expose them to different cultures, different professions, different cuisines. And that's the education side of my block, my hood, my city. So that's how that got started. As far as our community organizing, I've always been a community organizer since, you know, my mom raised me, you know, she was Jehovah's Witness, and she raised me to knock on doors and read the Bible to people as a kid. So those skills kind of translated to knocking on doors and saying, how do you feel about the red line closing? How do you feel about these issues? I've always had that inside of me, instilled in me to be a community organizer. And so, I mean, I live in Chatham on the south side of Chicago, and, you know, you can't find a better community for community organizers because, you know, we have a lot of block clubs, which are social groups that have been meeting for generations to improve the quality of life in their block. And so I've learned from a lot of block club captains and community leaders. And I just, now we work with 100 block clubs, and we help them with getting stop signs, speed bumps, cleaning alleys, block club parties. Like, we do a lot of things for block club captains around Chicago.
Mm-hmm. So given the dramatic events that happened in Minnesota over the weekend, which just horrific situation with, you know, another continuation of just violence against the African-American community, you know, on behalf of the police force, obviously, how is that impacting the people in your neighborhood, and what do you think we can do to end this scourge of kind of violence against African Americans?
Well, I would say anytime you have one group of people that has like unbridled power over another group of people, that never ends up good, regardless of what color people. I mean, we look at the Native Americans in this country, you know, like and just our first star on the shirt, and that's they call it the Fort Dearborn Massacre. I mean, anytime the Indians did anything, they said it was a massacre, but if Americans did something, it was a battle. Just look at that. I mean, you just look at the history of this country, right? And it's I think that I don't know if we're going to get to the end of it, right? I don't know if we're going to get to the end of it. There's a lot of we need better leadership. You know, we need better leadership right now. But I would say, what can you do? Like, instead of saying, oh, the government's messed up, the history's messed up, the cops are messed up, the schools, what's something you can do that'll have a positive impact on your block? Because you can sit here and blame it. The government's, the mayor's messed up, the alderman. What can you do? Like, if you have that approach, things can get better. If you start with the little things, you don't need a doctorate degree to give your neighbor a safety mask. You know what I mean? You don't need a master's degree to find some hand sanitizer and deliver it to your block. What's something simple you can do to create a positive impact on your block? And if everybody had that mindset and does something simple, that can create a wave of change throughout the whole country, really, and starting in Chicago. So I'm a big advocate of, you can, being a police officer is a tough job, man. They have to protect and serve imperfect human beings. I am not gonna wear a I can't breathe shirt. I'm not gonna hold my breath. I'm not gonna be jogging any more miles. I'm tired of doing all that because it feels like by Juneteenth, you know, there's gonna be another, unfortunately, it might be another Black man that's struck down by a police officer. So I feel like people in the communities are outraged, and rightfully so, man. Rightfully so. They don't know how to grieve right now, and they don't know where to channel that energy. So I would say that instead of the best way to fight back is to ask yourself, what's something simple I can do that'll make a difference? How can I make a difference on my block? And if you start with the simple things, you can develop some muscle to take on bigger challenges that are downstate Illinois or in the Senate. But start with the simple things first.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. And what I love about what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand the narratives that people have in their lives and help them write new narratives and write a new story for the future. So, you know, there are a lot of people out that are going to be watching this blog and saying, what can I do in the midst of this? I mean, you know, whether it's school shootings or violence, you know, the neighborhoods of Chicago, we all sometimes feel powerless to this. How can we help my block, my hood, my city do that amazing work that they do and help make a difference?
Well, I would say, first of all, if you know a senior that's in need right now of PPE or food, please sign them up at our website at formyblock.org. You know, we're trying our best to take care of seniors right now. If you want to donate to help us do that, you can do that as well at formyblock.org. But also, we want to support you. I mean, please let us know what you're doing in your block. How can we elevate your voice in your community? You know, we want to start putting out organizing packets for people so they can see how they can make a difference. What are the fundamentals to being an activist or organizer? A lot of times people feel like you just chase an ambulance and go on Facebook Live and next thing you know, you're an activist. No, man, like, how can you organize change in your community? How can, if there's 16 houses on one side of the street and 19 houses on that side of the street, can you create a flyer and get everybody to meet once per month? Well, how do you host a meeting? What kind of questions do you want to ask? What kind of information do you want to capture while you have people there? What are the issues you want to talk about? Should you bring food? I mean, like, I want people to really understand the fundamentals of being an organizer, because the more connected you are, the more safer you are, the healthier you are, and the happier everybody is. So I feel like you know, I want to support the next wave of real organizers in the world, and I want them to connect their blocks.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things I've realized in the work that I do with families is that it's very easy when you're not engaged with somebody to invent a story about who they are and what they believe. But if you engage with them, if you learn about their story and how they came to where they are, it's much harder to create this monolithic stereotype of who they are. You understand a little bit more. And by creating that sense of community, you know, hopefully we're all stronger and we get through this together. But unfortunately, our world is in this kind of divisive state. So I love what you're saying about engage with those people in your community. How many people know their next door neighbors or the people two doors down? And can we create a community where we all care for each other?
Yeah, but everybody knows who's in the president's cabinets, and no one knows their neighbors. It's crazy, man. This you know, this country since inception has been divided by competing interests of groups of people. Even our you know, the American motto is "E pluribus unum," which is, I think, it's out of many there's one. That's a you know, that's a lofty goal, or elusive goal. You know, I think it's beautiful, but it's elusive. But I think that it's okay to have differences. You know, that makes us so that makes America, like, we're strong because we have different, you know, philosophies, and we can test those against other people. But I still think that you have to step outside your comfort zone, man, and get to know your neighbors. And you could travel the world without leaving Chicago. That's the good thing about it. It's like there's so many different colors, genders, opinions, ethnicities, occupations. You know, this is a beautiful city, so I always tell people to step outside of the comfort zone and explore.
Mm-hmm. So the only way we can really live up to that American ideal of from many one is that we have to do the work, right? You know, that just doesn't happen. You have to create a sense of connection with each other. And what you're doing in organizing in your community is working to create that as a reality, which I really admire. So one of the things that I want to do when we can do this again is to try to work with you to do some field trips with some of your kids to some of the family businesses that we work with, so that they can see, you know, what a family owning a business does, and get exposed to different ideas for what their lives and their careers might look like. Any other ways that you think that people can help you guys?
I mean, this is help, man. Just amplifying our message. People can buy merchandise on our website and wear it. It's a walking billboard, but it gets people to. It's a conversation starter. Hey, where's your block? Where's your neighborhood? And you can talk about the assets of your neighborhood, and make, you know, people might want to visit there. So wearing the gear really helps expand our message. Volunteering, we have volunteer events once per month on our website. Again, this Saturday, on the 30th, where a lot of people are meeting us in Washington Park. You don't need to get out your car, just bring your car. If you want to make any deliveries for PPE to seniors, you can sign up at our website, formyblock.org, and we'll give you a few packages and addresses to drop off to seniors all over Chicago. So that's kind of how we're moving right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing for your communities, and in this time where trauma is added to trauma, we need people like you more than ever. So thanks for all you're doing, and we're going to do whatever we can to get more help for you and the folks in your block, your hood, and our city. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Appreciate you, man.